In a geopolitical maneuver both unprecedented in scope and staggering in impact, former U.S. President Donald J. Trump has returned to the center stage of global economic policy with a bold stroke: the imposition of a 125% tariff on all major categories of Chinese imports. At the same time, he has dramatically lowered tariff rates on Indian goods to just 10%, signaling a strategic pivot from the Chinese economic juggernaut to a rising democratic counterpart in Asia. This aggressive trade reconfiguration, which echoes and amplifies Trump's earlier confrontation with Beijing during his first presidential term, is not merely an act of economic warfare. It is a deliberate remapping of global economic supply chains. This bold recalibration intends to dismantle China's industrial overdependence on U.S. markets, curb Beijing's technological ambitions, and elevate India as a central pillar in the new global order. This article offers a 360-degree analytical exploration of the rationale, implications, and far-reaching outcomes of this seismic shift, examining historical context, strategic calculations, regional consequences, and future trajectories. The U.S.-China trade war did not begin in 2025. Its roots stretch back to the late 1990s, when China's rapid industrialization, driven by state subsidies and vast human capital, began displacing Western manufacturing powerhouses. By 2016, China's trade surplus with the United States had ballooned past $375 billion annually, stoking bipartisan concerns in Washington. President Trump's initial trade war in 2018-2020 marked the first full-scale confrontation. Tariffs ranging from 10% to 25% were levied on hundreds of billions of dollars in goods. Beijing responded with retaliatory measures, creating a tit-for-tat spiral. However, the COVID-19 pandemic temporarily froze escalations and revealed a more sinister dependency: China's dominance in medical supplies, rare earth elements, and electronics. Fast forward to 2025. Trump's re-election platform included an aggressive promise: total economic disentanglement from China. The 125% tariff represents the final embodiment of that goal, seeking to decapitate Beijing's industrial lifeline to the U.S. consumer economy. A tariff of 125% is not merely a fiscal measure. It is a declaration of economic war. The figure is calibrated to render Chinese goods uncompetitive overnight in the U.S. market. For context, prior protectionist tariffs during Trump's earlier tenure peaked at 25–30%, sparking temporary price hikes. This new level forces importers to immediately seek alternative sources or risk commercial extinction. The tariff primarily targets semiconductors and microelectronics, green energy equipment, automobiles and electric vehicles, textiles and consumer electronics, and telecommunication components. These sectors collectively form the core of China's export dominance and strategic future industries, especially those supported by its Made in China 2025 initiative. The aims of the tariff are to collapse cost competitiveness, break technological dependency, force relocation of manufacturing, and trigger internal economic rebalancing within China. In stark contrast, Trump's administration announced a near-total tariff rollback for Indian goods, slashing average rates from 22% to just 10% across all categories. This preferential treatment is underpinned by a set of strategic objectives. India is a democratic counterbalance to authoritarian China in Asia. India's labor costs are 30 to 40% lower than China's, and the country is rapidly upgrading its infrastructure. Strengthening India reduces Beijing's influence in the Indo-Pacific region. The US and India are deepening military, cyber, and AI collaboration. India's production-linked incentive schemes have already begun attracting top American companies, Apple, Tesla, and Intel among them. With tariffs slashed, Indian exports are poised to flood American shelves, especially in pharmaceuticals, textiles, consumer electronics, and automobiles. Facing the financial devastation wrought by the 125% tariff, global firms have been swift to react. Within weeks, Apple accelerated its iPhone production shift to India and Vietnam. Tesla announced plans to expand its Gujarat Gigafactory. Foxconn and Pegatron ceased new investments in Chinese plants. General Electric began resourcing industrial parts from Mexico. This movement is not simply economic. Political risk, from China's saber rattling in Taiwan to increasing surveillance regulations, has made diversification a survival strategy. India's government has seized the opportunity by easing regulatory frameworks, increasing digital connectivity through the BharatNet initiative, offering tax holidays for foreign investors, and expanding industrial corridors like the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Belt. India's GDP growth is projected to spike by 7.5% in the wake of these structural shifts, while FDI inflows may exceed $100 billion in the coming fiscal year. American manufacturers, particularly in steel, electronics, and advanced manufacturing, have hailed the tariff decision. Domestic production is resurging as import substitution becomes feasible again. The Trump administration has further incentivized this trend through tax credits for reshoring jobs, capital investment deductions, and America First procurement clauses in federal contracts. Yet, there is a price. The U.S. Consumer Price Index has begun reflecting cost inflation, particularly in smartphones, home appliances, and solar energy kits. The administration has countered this criticism by arguing that short-term pain is essential for long-term sovereignty and national security. Beijing, cornered but not incapacitated, has activated a multi-pronged counter-strategy: emergency subsidies for export manufacturers, yuan devaluation to mitigate tariff effects, and expanded Belt and Road Initiative spending to open new markets are part of this strategy. China has retaliated by restricting exports of rare earths critical for American defense industries, withholding graphite supplies essential to EV production, and tightening regulations on foreign firms operating within China. China is also shifting towards enhanced trade with Russia, Iran, and Central Asian republics, doubling down on the BRICS Plus framework, and promoting the ECNY to bypass SWIFT sanctions. While these strategies may offer temporary relief, they are unlikely to fully compensate for the loss of the American market. Winners of this realignment include India, elevated as the prime beneficiary of geopolitical arbitrage, and secondary hubs of manufacturing redirection like Vietnam, Mexico, and Indonesia. The United States gains strategic autonomy in critical industries. Losers include China, which faces potential contraction in industrial growth, the EU, caught in transatlantic crossfire, and global consumers, who may experience short-term inflation and product scarcity. Southeast Asian nations, notably Vietnam and Thailand, are poised to play an outsized role in this restructured order. With neutral foreign policies and open trade regimes, they offer compromise platforms for companies avoiding the China-US rivalry altogether. This realignment, while bold, is fraught with long-term complexities. Inflationary pressures may arise, and a change in U.S. leadership could unwind these policies. The decoupling of standards risks splintering global innovation ecosystems, and the WTO faces irrelevance in a world dominated by bilateral tariff wars. Nonetheless, the move has already reshaped corporate strategies, national budgets, and trade doctrines across the globe. The Trump administration's reintroduction of tariffs, now dialed up to 125% for China, is not merely an economic initiative. It is an ideological and strategic declaration. It reflects a worldview in which trade is not a neutral exchange, but a battleground for sovereignty, dominance, and national survival. By simultaneously elevating India and economically sidelining China, the United States is crafting a new economic axis that may define the 21st century. As India ascends and China recalibrates, one truth becomes unmistakably clear. The age of globalization, as once conceived, is over. What emerges now is a fractured, competitive, and strategic global economy, one where alliances are not just political, but tariff-engineered.